Welcome to Living the Spiral. This is a place to slow down, take a breath, and listen to the rhythms moving through your life. Here we explore astrology, human design, the I Ching, and elemental ancestral wheels of the year from cultures around the world. These are old maps and living languages that help us sense where we are in time, what is asking to unfold, and how we belong to something far larger than any single moment. In each episode, we trace patterns in the sky and in the body. We weave myth with lived experience, intuition with practice, and the personal with the collective. Living the Spiral is about learning how to move with change instead of pushing against it. About meeting transitions with curiosity, integrating polarities, and remembering that every season carries its own powerful wisdom. When you begin to listen to the cycles, life starts to feel more connected, more meaningful, and more alive. I'm your host, Allison Dale, and this is Living the Spiral podcast. So this series talks to people who are bringing their own form of magic into the world. And my guest today is Petah Raven, a professional editor and writer whose Substack, Pandora's Lost Gift, weaves together astrology, tarot, myth, and mysticism. Petah writes in a way that's both rigorously researched and deeply personal. And what moves me about their work is the willingness to report back from inside the experience. This is what the sky was doing at this exact moment, and here's what I found when I looked at it. Thank you so much for being here, Petah. I really appreciate you coming on the podcast.
Thank you. And actually, it's really nice to hear that feedback. I don't often actually get someone give me that kind of, or any feedback really of, oh, this is what your writing says, because I sometimes feel very conscious about what I'm writing. I've got such a sort of a nerdy academic style of writing. I genuinely appreciate hearing that. Actually, no, I do bring something personal, because that's my fear, is that I'm being too objective and cold and disconnected from it, all in order to get that kind of objective view.
It's good to blend the two together and bring in what made something feel worth researching or worth getting into the weeds about. Your Substack has been one that I've followed for quite some time and have loved reading your writings. It's called Pandora's Lost Gift, and I'd love to hear about the origin story of how you came to that title and what that means to you.
Okay, so I'm of Greek ancestry. That is my parents. My mum was born here in Australia, but also Greek. My grandmother from the war, etc., came out, and my dad was actually born there and then came out. So I'm the first and second generation. I grew up on the Greek myths. They were my fairy tales. As far back as I can remember, I heard these stories. Pandora's Lost Gift, if you don't know the story, it's quite fascinating. It's not quite the way that it got interpreted via the Renaissance period. It has changed it somewhat. Firstly, it's a jar, not a box. As an editor, people took, oh, Pandora's box. And I'm like, okay, I want to respect your creativity, but it wasn't a box. It was a jar. The story is that, of course, Prometheus, who is also a big sort of hero of mine, fashioned man, literally man, andros, out of clay, and all the gods breathed their gift into man, and that's how humans were created. Then, of course, there was the episode with Prometheus stealing the fire to bring to man, and Zeus is, no, that's not cool. And all that happened. And then he chains Prometheus up on the rock and all that. But man still has fire. So Zeus goes, I know what will redress that imbalance. I'll create a woman, Pandora, and the name Pandora, it of course means all gifts. So all the goddesses then gave part of themselves, breathed life into her, and gave her all their gifts, hence all gifts. And so Zeus gave her this jar and said, never open it. You must never open it, but almost in a trickery kind of way. And of course, it gets opened. Now, the popular myth is that Pandora opens the jar and all the ills of the world come out. In one version, actually, though, it's her husband, who is Epimetheus, who is Prometheus's brother. So without thinking, of course, Epimetheus opens the jar So it wasn't actually the woman, it was the man who opened the jar.
Oh.
And all the bad things, hate, war, fear, etc., come out. The lost gift, though, is hope. That remained in the jar. At the end of the myth, that is still in the jar. And so my idea of what Pandora's lost gift is the redeeming part. Zeus isn't going to be the complete prick and want to destroy humanity. He's like, I've got the failsafe. I've got the trip switch here that will fix that. And that is hope. And hope is the lost gift. It's still in the jar, and all it needs to be is released. And hope, to me, is the thing that gets you through darkness. It's the thing that's going to move you through hatred, bigotry, war. Hope is what gets us through that.
I love that so much. Yeah. I've actually been thinking about the word hope a lot lately because for some reason, the title of Barack Obama's memoir, The Audacity of Hope, has come up for me in a subconscious state lately because I've been thinking about the audacity of magic. And as I've been talking to more and more people who identify as magicians or as working with magic, I've been thinking about how it takes a certain audacity to say that you have magic within yourself. And same thing with hope. I remember that just the title of that memoir. And for some reason, it stuck with me more than others, just thinking about how it does require a certain wherewithal and a certain audacity to say, okay, I have hope amongst the darkness of the times. I did not know that hope was still in the jar. So that's really good news.
Yeah. And that's the thing, is that we need to access it. And so in some way, and that's the thing that's really interesting, we can turn the feminist lens on that whole myth and go, Zeus, what a prick, and patriarchal. But actually, he put it in there. Yeah. He's given us, he gave us the tools. He may have caused or put the other things in the jar that cause all the problems, but he also gave us the antidote.
Sounds like Zeus. Does sound like Zeus.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. There are still redeeming qualities. You just need to bypass the other stuff and don't give it any oxygen. That's the other thing, is that don't give it oxygen.
Yeah, it does need oxygen. I was drawn to your work initially, I believe, because of your essay about Inanna, and I had gone through a kind of similar experience of Inanna coming to me earlier this year, where I really started to just have major downloads and could not stop thinking about this ancient goddess and her descent to the underworld, but also all the other stories, Gilgamesh, and just everything that has been written by the earliest author that is recorded in the world, who is a woman, Duana. And I think through a Substack connection, found your essay as well, and we connected about that. And I do love that you're bringing this to the surface at the beginning of this conversation, how it is not a war of patriarchy versus matriarchy necessarily, and that we can bring and integrate the two and find that there is more that we can get from bringing the two together. What I notice in your writing is that you are bringing to the forefront a lot about goddesses, and you've written about Inanna. You've written about a lot of different goddesses that have touched you personally. And so I'm curious what your larger viewpoint is on that, on this resurgence, what seems to me to be a resurgence of goddess culture and interest in goddesses. From what I've seen over the course of my life, it seems like there's more interest now. But I'm curious about your take on a personal level and on a societal level, how the goddess is entering and how that does work with the patriarchal tellings of these myths.
Something happened at some point on my journey where I did get, this hasn't happened many times. This has happened all of maybe 3 times. So I'm not going to claim that this happens to me all the time. These are like literally one-off moments. And I was visited. Now, I don't know whether these beings, these entities are real and that was an actual visitation, or was it my imagination? I don't know. It's fascinating to wonder why and to try to work that out. But ultimately, it doesn't matter. Because the results is more important from an embodied, living, day-to-day point of view. But so visited by a goddess, I genuinely can say I wasn't chasing it or anything like that. It really did happen. I recognized this particular goddess in that sort of dream state, for want of a better word. It was during the day as well. It wasn't at night. I wasn't actually asleep or dreaming, although I was in a kind of half waking, and I wasn't in a drugged state or anything like that. It was a sort of that half awake, half dream state. It was real. That person was there, and there was a conversation that happened. And the upshot was I submitted. I saw myself on one knee in that sort of very chivalrous, I give my sword to you kind of thing. And then it was it. And then there was a moment a few years after that where this sounds weird, I was actually initiated into what is called in Australia women's business by some women who I knew, priestesses, elders, who said there were certain men that were led into women's business. They were allowed in the temple. We chose them. And they serve a purpose. This isn't some weird sexual thing, because there was nothing like that at all. And there were certain men who were part of our temple. And their job was to literally stand as witness and to a certain degree protection. This is what they told me. And then did this ceremony and did this initiation. And then interesting, it was on the land of one of the women. And at the end of the ceremony, I had to go and sleep in this. She had this, I guess, like a sacred circle thing on the land. It was just this round, literally round area, trees. And there was in the middle, there was a fire pit. And that's where they did big ceremony stuff. And I slept in there just under the stars with a sleeping bag and a pillow kind of thing. And then I woke up one night and I didn't, but I was probably this close to pissing my pants in. I was afraid. I was genuinely scared because again, might not have actually happened. It might have been a dream, but I woke up and I was in the middle of a circle of beings in robes, and I was under the sleeping bag, terrified. I was scared, but it was like, I'm going to stay really still because if they don't see me, they don't know I'm here. And I said that to Jo the next morning. I said, this is what happened. She's like, yeah, okay, welcome. It's all
You
good.
made it through the night.
Yeah. So I've always feel I've been that guy who's with God. And yet, so I've always felt a devotion to big G goddess and felt that's why that's for me. So it's not unusual that I've had then these other visitations were goddess forms. They are the ones who seem to pop up every now and then, who go, hey, I've got something to tell you. And it's usually in moments of crisis or low points where it's like, hey, it's okay. And hey, have you thought about this? Here's some medicine. Why that's happening is probably very obvious, I think, is the balancing of the scales. There is, from a Taoist yin-yang school perspective, there is a reason why you might say, hey, we might want the God to lead us for a little bit. But then there's a point where we also need the other. We need the yin as well as the yang. And now, why have we felt we've needed human civilization to do that? Why couldn't it just be side by side paired? I don't know. Also, having said that, a lot of the times, and I noticed, I just did it then, it's a very Western centric perspective of how civilization has happened and grown. That's not how a lot of the world has gone either. So this is very much the Western experience, and that's not to say it's a bad thing or a good thing or anything. It's just, it is what it is. Certainly monotheism has done a doozy on human civilization, at least in our part of the world. I genuinely not a fan. I'm a card-carrying pantheist, polytheist. I don't think it's healthy psychologically. I don't think it's healthy spiritually. For me, it just reeks of authoritarianism. And anything mono is not cool. I think Terence McKenna said something along those lines: 3 things that have ruined civilization: monotheism, monogamy, and hegemony. Yeah, that's true. And the thing is, there are gods, there are plural gods, but they seem to get just subsumed into one god. Whereas I think the beauty of the goddesses is they are quite pluralists,
Right.
lots of them. But the thing is, there are lots of gods too, but they don't seem to represent different aspects in the same way, as in the male gods don't seem to represent things in the same way as the goddesses do.
Yeah.
There seems to be more diversity, if you will, so that it feels a little bit more pluralistic, because it doesn't, and it feels wrong to say, for me, it feels wrong to say the goddess, whereas goddesses, you talk about what magic, imagination. This is where this all lives, this sort of imaginal realm I'll say in our minds, but and that's not less real. Our minds are amazing interfaces to the rest of the world.
I have been asking people that have been coming on this series about their definition of magic and imagination, having magic within that word. I'd love if you could expand on that just a little bit.
I think our imaginations and our minds are wonderful places to be. And it's the thing about religion that I feel I always have to say, mostly to monotheist people, but sometimes to polytheists too. It's like it doesn't need to have actually existed historically in real life for it to have meaning. Jesus didn't have to be real, but the messages that this guy supposedly said, they're cool. He doesn't need to be real. The Buddha doesn't need to be real. The Olympians don't need to be, they don't need to have existed. I remember my uncle once saying, I want to know whether the Greek myths actually happened. I'm like, these stories, if they inspire you to do something wonderful and beautiful, it doesn't matter. The Bible doesn't need to be literally true for the good stuff in there to be cool. Look, I'm very pro-science, but I think that's the problem with what we call materialism. It's like, it has to be true. We need evidence. That's absolutely true for that part of reality. But there's also the other part of reality which lives in our imagination, which is our minds, which is we can imagine utopias. We can imagine a world where there is no bigotry and hate. And so for me, the fantasy world of Middle-earth and Tolkien is just as valid and spiritually so as the Buddha's Dhammapada or the Bhagavad Gita or anything like that. It's why I love fantasy and science fiction and speculative fiction, because these people are imagining different worlds and different scenarios, and they're doing the what if. They're like, okay, what if we did have interstellar travel? How would that change humans? How would that change us psychologically? How would we deal with the fact that we can travel light years in a matter of hours? How would we deal with the fact if we landed on a planet where the laws of physics were completely different? It's those what if questions. So sitting there and going, what if I was visited by a goddess who said, do this, and I did that, and my life completely changed? Okay, cool. Why does it need to be proved to be real? Why does it need to have historically happened that this man said this and then got put on a cross? So that, for me, the Bible is just as much of a wonderful piece of fantasy fiction as Tolkien or Michael Moorcock or whoever. It doesn't matter. Can I engage with these words? And does it change something, preferably for the better? For me, does it help me grow? Does it help me evolve as a person? That meaning that I construct, I think, is more important. Same with astrology. I really genuinely don't think a planet 8 billion years away moving a degree in the sky is going to actually have an effect on me. But the meaning that I construct, the fact that, it's now conjunct my natal Jupiter or whatever, what does that mean? How do I engage with symbols? How do I engage with the words? How do I engage with the meaning that I place behind it? And it's not about what construction of meaning they place. It's like, how do I engage? So I try to always put, anytime I write astrologies, this is happening, but the benefits is going to be when you engage with it, like in your chart, because your chart is the map for your life. It doesn't matter globally, but it matters individually, and that matters only when you engage personally with. And the same with words. And it's all words. This is my fascination, is words and storytelling.
Yeah.
And that's because storytelling is the original language, right? Yeah. That's how we communicated.
I recently read a book called Sand Talk by Tyson Yunkaporta. He's a Aboriginal Australian. Are you familiar with this?
I haven't read it, but I'm aware of the book.
But it's about the yarns that are told within in most indigenous cultures when we have a direct connection to the land and to other people that aren't transactional. So what you're saying is I think that we have come so far away from that, where we still tell stories, but it's almost like they have to have a moral or a purpose at the end. And I do believe that throughout history, throughout all of human culture, there has been meaning made through the act of doing, through the act of storytelling, rather than waiting for what's the point of this kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I agree with you that I love that you're bringing up the fact that astrology needs to be engaged with, the Lord of the Rings needs to be engaged with in order for it to create meaning. You can't just read the Cliff Notes or just and then expect to get it. It's through the process of reading a chart, of starting to understand what is coming through. I very much agree with that it's a participatory kind of co-creative situation.
We read charts. We read charts. It's all in the language. What are spells? Oh, that was actually one of my gateways, ironically, was the Nordic runes. For some reason, I don't even remember how and why that even happened, but I found myself in possession of the book and started becoming fascinated with it. And then it was like, oh wait, so each of these symbols has this whole idea behind it, and this sort of magic in itself is a spell. But then when we pop them together, we create a word, and that word is powerful because its components are this spell. Oh wow, this is really cool.
Spelling. I don't know when that came into my awareness. It feels very obvious now, but oh yes, of course, you know, spelling is casting spells. Your words are
and
magic.
the link between the English word and the sort of Germanic or Proto-Germanic Wyrd, W-Y-R-D, which is also where we get the word weird, like weird and word, like they are actually linked. And
I love that too.
Yeah, we're spelling weirds. I love this.
Yes, planting those imaginal cell seeds. Yeah. I think of imagination and then the butterfly's imaginal cells, or when it comes into the cocoon, and it could be anything. It will turn into a specified thing, but it really requires being in that goo for a while and sitting in the stillness, right? In the goo. I've seen it so much within my circles, but I'm sure there's people out there that are not aware. These cells that are undifferentiated, and they're called imaginal cells. To me, that's always just been so striking. The imagination is a complete beginning of a new cycle where anything could begin. And we have so many beautiful myths to pull from, but they can be told in so many different ways. I really appreciate that about what I've read of your work, as well as that it's not saying this is the myth of this. You're working with different modalities, tarot, the I Ching, Taoism, astrology, and I think that's why I was so drawn to your work in the first place. I also discovered runes as one of my first forays into this world of casting, and I used to write notes between my friends and I in junior high with the runic symbols as a code language that the teachers couldn't read if they ever caught us passing notes in class. And I found a box under my bed the other day. There was all these old rune notes that were just gossiping from 13-year-olds to each other. I love
that. Codes and ciphers. That's also been a big part of the history of magic, is how do we communicate with one another in codes? So the people who are going to burn us don't do that.
Right.
Catch us. Yeah, it's always been fascinating. Yeah, even as a kid, fascinated with the sort of medieval alchemists and people. Agrippa and those, sometimes we did painting runes and ciphers and symbols and magical things and sigils.
Do you remember, do you have a first memory from when you were quite young? Was it something that was accepted in your household or in your immediate society to be engaged with these types of things? Or was it something that was a little bit more on the fringe?
Like I said, were my fairy tales. Obviously, I was exposed to the usual ones as well, the sort of Disney ones. the sort of the Brothers Grimm. Dark. They're so dark. Really... With them as an adult, right? The Brothers Grimm there's some really messed up stuff there, but that's cool. I kind of like that. It's folk horror, really. It's folk horror for kids. Ancient Egypt was something that fascinated me as a child always. I went and studied Egyptology for that reason as an adult. I was like, this is what I love. So that, I think, as an early kid, but then once I was at school age and reading lots and being in Australia, it was English. is in English literature from the UK. So it was Catweasel, who was some sort of crazy hermit wizard living in sort of Anglo-Saxon times. And then, yeah, the Arthurian myths, obviously, Merlin, the Avalon mythology. I was fascinated with, I was just fascinated with all this, would have been called superstition, magic and superstition. I do remember there was a book at the library, the Encyclopedia of Magic and Superstition. I loved it. I used to borrow it, and it was a primary school. And that's where I learnt about the medieval alchemists and Haitian voodoo and like all of it. It was like, this is fascinating. But it was the 007 film Live and Let Die, which I think was the first Roger Moore film, where it's Jane Seymour's character Solitaire is a tarot reader. And I saw that and I was like, I want to do that. Interestingly, that was primary school. And then when I was in sort of high school, maybe 13, 14, I walked past this game shop and they had the tarot deck that was in that film. And I bought it. That was my first tarot deck, Tarot of the Witches. And then it was just, that was the snowball. And then again, in that sort of high school teen era, I found a book, Zola's Compendium of Occult Sciences or something like that. And there was this, half the book was devoted to, here's a course of study to develop ESP. Great, cool. All right, that's what I'm going to do. I don't think I remember getting through anything other than the first 3 days. Unfortunately, being neurodivergent is, the brain takes you.
Oh, I know all about it.
I follow breadcrumbs wherever they go.
Oh, the spider webs over this way, that, yeah.
Yeah, and it's also, that was a problem, a bit of a problem with university, because it's like, I'm going to study this now.
I had 7 different majors by the time I graduated.
Multiple majors, multiple degrees.
Yeah, gotta catch them all. It just feels so like a catchphrase for the neurodivergent.
Because there's so much cool stuff in the world to learn about. Don't understand people who don't want to learn. Read and watch a documentary. Just, there's so many cool breadcrumbs. This world is so wonderful and awesome. Really, there's got to be something that catches your attention and gives you that sense of awe and wonder. Like,
yes.
Just...
In the human design mandala that's based on the I Ching, this week we're in the gate of enthusiasm, or the I Ching 16 hexagram, which is enthusiasm. And to me, that feels so appropriate for Gemini season, because we're in this time where you look around and you see the pollinators in the northern hemisphere. I'm looking out my window and I see just the birds and the bees and the butterflies and everything just bopping from flower to flower. And I haven't been able to get that out of my head as far as that archetype of what are the twins. They're finding something to talk about with everybody. And I do feel that is the type of energy that I wish I could pass along to everyone. As a teen, there's like, I'm bored. But then when I started to think about it, it has stuck with me, because I do believe that at any given moment, there's infinite number of things to dive deeper into and to connect the dots between. And I so appreciate when that starts to happen and that becomes normalized. I think that the normalization of needing to find the top of the pyramid or get to the answer or find the proof for something really derailed me. In high school, I was also into tarot and ESP and just as many of these quote unquote occult, or however you want to call it, and art as well, the act of creation that really was a place where we brought together, and without any shame or without any having to put things in any particular order. And then I think college time came and I was like, I need to study something practical. And it ended up being international development and anthropology. And I was like, okay, these are still very broad topics that are still trying to tie all the world together. But it was in a way that, maybe I'll get a job in politics or economics or academia. And now I'm in my 40s and have come fully back around to where I was in high school and before.
And did you find, though, that anthropology, etc., like, that's just another way of looking at the same thing, really?
Absolutely.
That's what I found. I went into it thinking one thing, got disappointed with that thing, but then it was like, but look at this other blooming thing that wow. And I think that's the problem, or the boom maybe, is going, actually, that's the same thing. And we're all looking at the same thing, i.e. humanity or human society or human relationships. But we're just looking at it from different angles and approaching it. Yeah.
And to me, it does feel like we are coming upon an era where there, maybe because of social media, the internet in general, just the way that people are able to see that more prevalently. You don't have to choose a track as early on. You're able to go on to Reddit or something and jump between different Reddit threads quite easily, as opposed to saying, I need to study this.
To that.
There's more Yeah, I feel like there's more cross-pollination happening now than there ever has
Yeah.
before.
And yeah, the internet was in the dark old days of the 90s when we had dial-up internet. I was completely fascinated by the idea of hyperlinked texts because it was almost like I instinctively always knew when I was reading text on a page, it's like this word is literally a portal into something else, or this sentence. Someone will say something in a sentence that's just on the surface. It's part of the story or it's part of the hypothesis being presented. But that sentence itself, if you dive into that sentence, there's a whole other book. And it's like when the internet and hypertext HTML pages began, you could have a word or a sentence and hyperlink it, and you click on that. And wow, I'm in a whole different world now.
Yeah.
And that hyperdimensionality of the text now becoming hyperdimensional or multi, and all of a sudden reading is no longer linear.
Yeah.
Because you can, and I love that we use the word surfing because it is like surfing. You surf the internet. So you just go from link to link. And it's a wonderful oracular way of, I don't know if that's the case nowadays. I think the
algorithm has got, bring it back to that organic way.
But in the sort of Wild West days, before corporations and capitalism found its way on the internet, before that, it was just ideas and information and stories and knowledge. It was a big library, and you could just click, oh, I'm here now. I'll just click that one. Go from ancient Egypt to someone's page on Dungeons and Dragons to why Led Zeppelin is the greatest rock band in the world to fractals to chaos mathematics to... Yeah, it was wild.
But it's not different. The same, right? The scroll replaced the web, right?
It's not, I
do think the web is the framework of it. It's all there. I feel like that is very much Age of Aquarius, but I do think we're in this Pluto and Aquarius era where we're seeing the underworld, the underbelly of that. It rose to this point of being, okay, we can get anything anywhere. And then powers that be started to recognize that and are like, ooh, let's put some little traps over here and put a little sticky stuff over here so people can...
I also think that's a lot of power. So let's take the sort of the corporation thing out of it for a second. Okay, now if we take on the hypothesis that magic is the words and spells are words, right? And knowledge and information, that's a lot of power. So in ye olde days, you would be in a monastery and you would learn how to manage this power, a monastery, a wizard's tower, or whatever.
You knew the responsibility that came with it, right?
You learned how to wield the power, to quote Spider-Man. So now you have all this knowledge and all this power, and you don't know, unless you know how to deal with it, you don't. And so magic becomes wild. It becomes chaotic. It becomes disruptive, and not necessarily in a good way. And this is, I think, is what we're experiencing, is the consequence of basically giving babies chainsaws and going, here you go, without... have you learnt or earned the wisdom that comes with wielding this magic? And I think that redress is happening now, and we'll see the results of that in a generation's time, more or less.
I think so as well. With great power comes great responsibility. And it was a friend of mine who was guiding me through, and she said, basically, we're going into this playground, into this forest, and you come to a table and you see a magician card on the table, and you take a look at it, just really take in what that magician card looks like. And then the prompt was to go into it and see yourself as the magician. And so I immediately went into the table, and I first saw this beautiful card that my daughter just got, a deck of tarot cards. She's 7, and she wanted that for her treat for her last day of first grade. She was like, that's all I want is my first tarot deck. And so she got this mermaid deck, which was super beautiful. But I initially saw that because it was a beautiful representation of this mermaid magician. And then for some reason, my imaginal cells started turning and twisting, and I ended up seeing the Rider-Waite tarot deck of the magician with the magi in a robe, the white robe with the red. And I was reminded of recently, I don't know if you picked up on this in the tarot world, but there were a lot of people sharing how Donald Trump had posted an AI image of himself that looked like Jesus, where he was healing somebody wearing a white robe.
Dr. Jesus. Yeah.
Yeah, Dr. Jesus. But a lot of tarot people that I follow were making the association that he didn't actually look like Jesus. He looked like the magi.
The magician.
He looked like the magician,
in
right?
in the Colman Smith deck. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I saw that before she prompted the face merge or to merge into that body.
Yes.
And that's what it had appeared. And then she guided us there. And so I found myself having to put my own likeness into the body of Donald Trump as the Jesus Magi, which was a very strange meditation, a very strange process. And it really did make me think about the power that is wielded by magicians. And as I speak to this, I've resonated with this word so much this year, with the imagination and with this notion of agency and really putting ourselves out there, as far as the fact that we can co-create with the world is really how I see magic. But I think a lot of people who don't necessarily have the best intent have also realized that at one point along the way.
Absolutely. And the magician. And as soon as you said that, I was like, holy, yeah. It's interesting how memes they do work into our brains. Yeah, and the magician is a trickster. If you look at the Golden Dawn correspondence, it's Mercury, it's Hermes, and who's a trickster god. He is a trickster. And the magician will use smoke and mirrors to tell you one thing, but it's not. That is the shadow aspect of that too.
Right.
And we're all capable of that. A little interesting parallel action.
Yeah, I think I need to sit with this experience of what it feels like to claim that and to transmute and to replace someone who is wielding a certain type of magic on the world through fake news, however it shows up, whatever words we want to use for that. But there's even just with the wordplay that's been happening since the beginning of that administration, and there's parallels all over the world for sure.
Yeah, they are. I don't know whether anyone's aware of it or not, but they are totally using magic. So is Goebbels. And I think Goebbels was aware that we have evidence that the Nazis back then were diving into the occult. That was it was very conscious. It was very deliberate.
Very well known.
I don't know whether your illustrious president and his people are necessarily aware. Maybe they are. There's certainly no clues. There's no overt or explicit evidence to suggest, whereas there definitely was in the other. But that's what they're doing. They're casting a spell over so many people, going for us. All politicians. Let's be fair.
Yeah, it's part of the game.
And that's the thing about magic. What is magic? It's spells as words. And that's what spin is. That's what propaganda is. That's what news is. Right. It's storytelling. And I don't know if this happens over your way, but here our pundits and politicians talk about we need to at least win the second election because we need time to build our narrative. Because it's like when you have a vision for what you want to do, and I think there's nothing wrong inherently with this. It's like we have a vision. We want we want the people of our nation to be a certain way, as in to have a certain level of prosperity, and we need to balance the books and all this kind of thing. Is we need to build a narrative because we need to be able to sell the story, have you people understand the story of the big picture of what we're trying to build, not that we're trying to just do things in the immediate. Oh, we'll give you this if you vote for us. That's very transactional, very immediate. The big picture does involve the story, and you can't necessarily tell the whole story in a soundbite. So how do you do that? And again, how many thousands of words is The Lord of the Rings, for example? Or good stories, The Wheel of Time, which is now, 13 volumes or whatever, and tens or hundreds of thousands of words to tell this story.
World building. It is full on world building. People who have that audacity to do it will do it. And I have seen this in the kind of online spiritual space, or just with people that I know that are in the realms of coaching or therapy that's related to this bigger picture of where we are right now. I have seen a lot of the word world building out there. I've encountered a friend of mine does a world building school, and I've always appreciated that so much because it isn't like you can just have a vision and there it is. It's like within the myths that are dying, we have to plant the seeds for the new myths that are going to arise. And
exactly.
But it's who has the right to do that and who has the resources to do that. And one thing I've come to a lot lately in my world is that a lot of people are like, oh yeah, I believe in myself. I have the heart. I believe in co-creation and world building and all these things, but I still have to go to my day job. I still have to pay the rent. I still have to exist within this capitalist structure that doesn't allow me to fully invest. And there's the people that just jump off the cliff and take the plunge and decide to go for it. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. It's like this bargaining that we are so used to doing with insurance companies or the government or our boss or whoever it is, right? But I do feel like there is something, a new way of being. And that's why I'm doing this series, is really just talking to people who have taken the plunge at some point along the way and decided, okay, I know what my passions are. I know I'm a multi-passionate person, but I know that I love that enough to follow it to the ends of the earth. So I'm curious, was there a moment in time where you felt like there was a crossroads where you were either going the way that the man or the way you should be going, or your own path towards your own interests? Or were you always just on your own, following your own hermit's lamp?
There was definitely a point for me in like high school times where I had the conscious thing of, I'm not going to do what I went to I don't know what you guys call them over there. We call them private schools here. But I think in the UK, it's what they call the public schools. It's the whole school tie uniform thing. It's the kind of school that produces CEOs,
right.
People who go into finance and banking and medicine. Right. This is the kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
Blue blood, very bougie, very upper middle / upper class. Anyway, I don't know why I read. Migrant families, send your kid to the best school, that kind of thing. But I did not belong. I clearly did not belong. But at some point, realized, this is not, I'm not going to follow the path that all these other people are going to follow. I don't know why, but it was like, yeah, I'm not doing that. I went looking because I remember as a kid, it was like, I want to be a writer. That's what I said I wanted to be. I said I wanted to be an archaeologist, which I did become an archaeologist. I guess I did become a writer to a certain extent too. I'm now 52. I feel like I've only just come round to that. I've taken the long way round. So I don't, just because I had that thought when I was 16, doesn't mean that I've then found myself on the path. I got distracted by sex, drugs, and rock and roll, just like any good teenager should. In my opinion, anyway. It was definitely a long and winding road. And then I think I've always then gone, hang on, I'm in the wrong direction. Hang on. Go that way. And then, oh, cool, I'm on the right path. And then just get lost again. And it's because life, and a little bit of social expectations and things like that. And social familial relationships take you in a different direction. Friends take you in, friendship groups, circles take you in directions, and you realize, hang on, I want to do one of the things. I love tabletop role-playing games because it's a wonderful creative tool, wonderful collaborative storytelling thing. And it was always, hey guys, let's play D&D or let's play this. No one was interested. And then, okay, cool. If you don't want to play it, that's cool. We'll just go along. And then at some point it was like, hang on a minute. I really want to do this thing. That means I need to pull myself out of the rhythm, the social circle. I need to pull myself out of that tide and move ahead. But then you find yourself.
How can you tell if you're on the right path, or what was it that was bringing you back to yourself, even when other people or peers were pulling you out?
That's sort of, I guess, what they call gnosis. And that's an inner knowing. And it is about being able to, I'm going to say listen, but some people maybe don't hear. Maybe it's sentient, feeling a sense, a felt sense within the body. Or it might be visions. If people are highly visual, then they're going to have inner visions, or they're going to hear, but whichever way it expresses itself through your senses, whether it's kinetic, the felt sense and the gut feeling, or it doesn't, but it comes from with. It's like, I can only explain it as you just know. It is that simple. How? Can't tell you. Because we all have different dominants. The first step of gnosis is understanding how you know. Am I feeling things? And I think actually the first bit is the curiosity. And that, for me, that comes back to that imaginal realm. Is what can I imagine And out of all the things that I can imagine, what grabs my attention? What am I curious about? And curiosity is that thing. Which breadcrumb trail am I going to follow? Yeah. So that sense of curiosity. And I think actually that's it. The curiosity is follow that curiosity, however. And if it means, oh, I start to feel things, great. So curiosity and presence. The times when I've realized I'm off track, waking up and going, oh yeah, I've just been on autopilot. I don't know if you've experienced this. Sometimes I'm driving on the highway and then I go, wait, hang on. I don't remember the last 20 minutes of driving. You're on a highway, but it's like, whoa, that's potentially dangerous because my attention is some idea or a story or the music I listen to or whatever. It's, whoa, hang on. And that's that thing where you wake up, and presence is that, oh, where am I? I'm here in this time, in this place, in this moment. Yeah. Mindfulness is maintaining presence, being present always. So that thing of washing the dishes is a spiritual practice, because when you're washing the dishes, you're washing the dishes. You're not thinking about what you're going to do. You're not thinking about your purpose. I'm washing the dishes. Cool. So maintaining that sense of presence, that's how you stay on track.
Yeah.
And it's interesting for me. I've always wondered, okay, I could very clearly lose that and I very clearly get off track. Sometimes I might be lucky and still be on the road. It's good that I've got an emergency warning system that something goes, wake up, notice where you're at. Oh, yeah, hang on, I shouldn't be here. This is not where I need to be. Mm. I guess the hard part, as you say, is then if it's a life thing, hang on, I'm not in the job. This job is not fulfilling. I hate this. Right. Because there's very important practical things that also need to follow something like that. You can't just quit your job, but what if you've got dependents? What if you've got a mortgage? Yeah. So there, and that's patience, right? And these are the things that the I Ching teaches us. It's like, cool, you've got that, you've had the initiative, the yang, hexagram 1, initiating. Oh, I've got this idea. But then when you read the lines, it's like, the spark of the new idea has come. Wonderful. Now you need to wait. Now the dragons need to rest. There are the pragmatic concerns, but it's then you have to maintain the presence of going, I want to make this change in my life. Cool. I'm going to move countries. Hang on. I've got kids at school. I've got a mortgage. Cool. I've got a job. How do I do this? And that's the sort of intellectual scientific stuff. That's the application of, okay, let's work out the logistics of how to do this. But the imagination is what gives you the spark, the spark of creativity. Same with writing a novel or writing anything. Here's the spark, but then I've got to execute. And the execution is very methodical. The yang and the yin. And so again, that Chinese metaphor is that in terms of the wuxing, the 5-phase system, is that the wood element or the wood phase is the channel. It's the doing that moves the water, because water is the mother of wood. And that is that creative pull that the wood gives you structure. But wood is also malleable, right? So yeah, it's yin and yang. It's flexible yet yielding yet firm.
The willow branches.
We need both. Oh, why do we need goddesses? Yeah, because we need the yin and the yang. We need the matriarchy and the patriarchy. The alchemical marriage, the lover's card, is the eros gamos, it's the sacred union. It's the red and the white coming together. That and temperance. It's the magic is the coming together of the polarity, because what's created from the polarity is the spectrum of infinity in between, right? So again, the Taoism, I love Taoism. I just adore it. There's so much, just for me, common sense in it. The one leads to the two, leads to the three leads to the 10,000 things. Polarity gives you a spectrum of infinite diversity. We need both.
Yes, we're coming up on a full moon, and I always think about full moons were the time when I first really started to notice polarity in my body. And I was like, because I think everybody has a relationship with a full moon. And even if you have nothing to do with astrology, it's like, it's a full moon. And from a young age, there's this like visceral connection to it. And I remember connecting to the full moon and noticing that it would either make me feel really incredibly good, so juiced up, or the werewolf crazy and filled with tears and just so upset. But I started to really notice and pay attention to full moons a long time ago, where I noticed if I had integrated a little bit of the polarity between the season I was in and the opposite season is the way I like to frame it. Especially when I started to learn astrology and I was like, okay, we're in Gemini season and the full moon is in the opposite sign of Sagittarius. They're very different energies. Gemini is the buzzy pollinators and Sagittarius is like, we have to plan the long game and have patience, and we're not going to get to that other horizon where we shot our arrow right away. And so you can't live in both at the same time. You have to be enthusiastically buzzing around from website to website, or planning like, okay, I got to stop doing that so I can actually make some money to get to that other country I want to move to, right?
Yeah.
These different ways, but they're both on this same axis of a similar frequency. And so when I describe polarities in an astrology chart when I'm doing a reading, it's always that infinity sign between both.
Yeah.
The north and south node, or during a full moon, it's about really bringing in the essence of what's on the other side to where you currently are and creating that infinity loop that can make magic happen. The infinity symbols on the magician card, and I think of that as that is the integration of polarity.
Also on the temperance card, right? In Colman Smith's depiction of the temperance is is it? Maybe I'm thinking of a different.
No, I think right.
I'm thinking of a different deck, but I'm pretty sure in her depiction is the temperance is the same thing. And then the Two of Cups as well. We do live in both places, though, and this is so our physical self might be there, but at least our imagination can then. If we're in Gemini, our imagination can go over to Sagittarius as well and go, yeah, that's right. Yeah, because we did shoot the arrow. My thoughts follow the arrow too. But even though I'm here, that's part of, full moons. Yeah.
There's something about it. It's mirror in the sky.
I love that the moon is the symbol in Chinese, their paradigm of that is what yin is about, because yin reflects. Because, of course, the second hexagram is responding. It doesn't initiate. And I wonder what a feminist, genuine feminist angle on that relationship between hexagram 1 and 2 would be about, or the yin yang thing. Because it is interesting, because in that paradigm, yin isn't the initiator. Yin is the reflector. Yin is the responding. But you actually need both.
It goes back to that Eros Gamos. There's certain versions that put 1 and 2, the feminine first, the pure yin 1, and then yang as the secondary element that comes in as the pure yang.
Yeah, there's a lot of Chinese texts missing, and we know that they're missing because in the Han Dynasty, they had lots of essentially catalogs of texts. So texts that were lists of this book. So we know that they existed, but we don't have them. So I think that's one of those ones. And we don't have the text, but we know that it existed.
There's a possibility. I think as a feminist interpretation, for me, that's where I initially went, because I do feel like yin is the earth from which the plant grows. Yin is the body. Yin is the womb of creation. And then from that, there is the spark of creation, the pure yang within that. And so it makes sense that they would be 1 and 2, but the order doesn't really matter. That it requires both for the rest of the grams to happen.
But the Tao Te Ching, it might be the same verse as that from 1 comes 2. But the point is that, the 1 is empty, is the void. If you have something, you must have nothing. You can't have one thing without the other. So the 1 is the void, is the empty. And most cultures generally see the void as the womb. So it's the feminine.
Yin, whether it's female or male.
Right. Or the soil, as you say, or the seed. So there is that. And that's the thing. If you dive deep into Qian, into the first hexagram, and this was what, reverse the tape. I did a process several years back where I woke up one morning and it was like, sit and work with the I Ching every day, every week for 64 weeks kind of thing. Monday, line 1, Tuesday, line 2, etc. Day 7, integrate. Next Monday, go to the next hexagram. I journaled it and ended up translating the bloody thing. And it was so interesting because when I woke up that morning, it was like, do this. It was like, initiating, yes. The yang, the spark, the idea, I'm going to do this. I'm going to write books. I'm going to do workshops and I'm going to do video. And then the first line is literally, oh yeah, great. Wait, stop. And then every one of those yang lines, those 6 yang lines is wait. Yes, this is the archetypal yang hexagram. Wait. So it's interesting because even embedded in that first hexagram, which are all yang lines, and it's meant to be the archetype of yang, and that's what it represents. What's inherent in each line? Wait. It's the yin. It stops. So it's still there. It is still in that first hexagram.
Interesting.
It's just that the yin is never the outward. It's the moon. It's reflecting the light. It's not the source of light. The yang might be the source of light. That's the sun. The moon reflects it. And it's still light. Physics tells us it's still the same photon. Yeah, the yin is in the yang. And that's also the point of the Taiji too, is that you can't have one without the other. In Chinese, it's never really used as yin and yang. They're never referred to as separate. It's always yin yang. It's a single yin yang because you can't separate these things. Not dualism. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Going back to your Substack title of Pandora and bringing up this notion of the gods making the first humans from clay, I've been researching recently about Fuxi and Newa in Chinese lore, who are the creator. And I found this beautiful image that I'd never seen before of the two of them. The Fuxi cycle of the I Ching is what's used in human design, which was my foray into this, right? So Fuxi was the initial primordial first emperor, right? But Newa was his yin counterpart, essentially. And she was said to have created the first humans from clay from that part of the world. So I thought it was just so interesting to think about how the image of them is a black and white serpents that are kind of interlaced with these two heads, and one's holding a compass and one's holding a square. And so it ties it. It's just this most beautiful image of kind of the circle and the angles and the masculine and the feminine and any type of counterparts to both. But I'll post an image in the Substack because it is this cosmic duality that exists in most cultures. And I feel
I'll say polarity. I'm going to pull you up on the language. Polarity, because polarity is just two sides of the same, or two in the same thing, or two parts.
There are not two. It is one, right? This is not the two. I like that. I appreciate that.
And of course, Fuxi saw that because it was the great weird turtle that came out of the waters.
With the bagua,
had the patterns on the back. Yes, we have the yin and the yang, but there's something outside of that. That's something cosmic that's outside of that goes, hey, here you go. Here's a gift.
Here's what we're working with in the tangible realm. And here's your tools on the magician's table, right?
And if Fuxi wasn't present, he wouldn't have seen the patterns on the back of the turtle.
True.
The dragon turtle. But was it a turtle horse? Oh, I can. There's so many different.
You're such a wealth of information pouring through. I feel like I talked to you for many more hours.
That's why I'm not rich and famous, because I spend my time actually following these little breadcrumbs that I'm curious about. Oh, what does this mean?
Oh, me too. Yeah, no, very mirroring here. It's beautiful how you're intersecting all of these different intelligences and wisdoms from around the world and into your own lived experience.
And that polarity thing, when you were saying Fuxi and Newa, you think about what the Golden Dawn did with tarot. The whole thing of what was behind tarot was that you needed to have the person who wrote the tarot and the person who drew it, and there had to be gender polarity. So if Arthur Edward Waite, you did Pamela Colman Smith, Alistair Crowley, and Lady Harrison.
Okay,
so this whole thing is the polarity of creation. So I'm writing I've got some decks that I'm writing, and I'm trying to find an artist. And that's the whole thing, because I'm like, I can't do it without the artist. I need the yin to my yang, or the yang to my yin, whichever way I want to look at it. Yeah, we need, take the gender out of it, you just still need a sperm and an egg, irrespective of gender. You need those two things to come together. Lots of chromosomes to go together.
And that makes life, that makes cells come into being.
That's right.
And
we need the embodied and the imaginal. We need the ritual, but we also need the imagination behind the ritual, or the intention, whatever it is.
Yeah. I think when I first started interacting with you on Substack, I was surprised to find that you were a male-bodied individual, because I was writing so much about the goddess and Inanna at that point, and found that most people, the majority of people that I was engaging with, were female, I would say. I'm curious if that's something that throughout your world and your communities, have you encountered many other people that identify as either non-binary or male that are following a paths of the goddess.
I'm such a hermit anyway, so I'm very much the solitary rich. So, but remembering the days when I was gathering with others to do stuff, if it came to anything remotely goddess related, I was usually the only guy.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's a lot of women writing who write oracle decks and tarot decks and things like that. There's definitely a lot of that. There's very few men. I'm thinking of all the authors I've worked with. There's 2 I know of compared to maybe dozens of women. And I would like to see some more voices from non-white middle class women, non-binary, queer, people from different cultures, etc. I'd love to see more of that. I know that it's going to be different. It's not going to be a standard goddess oracle deck. Probably going to be very different. And I'm here for it.
We absolutely need all the voices. Yeah. But the story of Inanna, when Ereshkigal in the underworld has put Inanna on a hook, and she's continuing to grieve and mourn her husband, and she's in a state of pure despair. It is Enki who sends down a couple of beings that are non-binary, very by their nature, by distinction, non-binary. They do not have a gender. They are not female. They are not male. And they are the ones that go down and are able to retrieve Inanna and actually bring her back to the above world. I believe it's because they witnessed Ereshkigal in her pain, and they didn't try to do anything. They didn't try to change her or fix her. Yeah. And to me, that's the most potent part of that whole story, is that someone just needs to be present with the grief, to be present with the pain. And that, I think, is the purpose of that descent almost, is to recognize that it's not about changing or fixing, but just sitting with the reality that death and grief and pain are a part of this cycle. And then with that, they were able to bring Inanna back to the above world. I have met some trans people who identify with this story as one of the most ancient myths that we have as humans, and that there are such critical characters within that are non-binary, that are not identified.
Hermes is definitely ambiguous, let's say. Interesting also, because the Egyptian version of Hermes is, in the Greek, is Thoth. In ancient Egyptian, feminine names end in et. It's basically a T. There's no E because there's no vowels that we know of in Egyptian language, in Middle Egyptian. The original name of Thoth in Egypt has the T ending, so he might be a god, but he has a goddess's name.
Oh, that's
it's Jehuyet.
Okay.
Or as close as we can pronounce it, Jehuyet. Some people say Jehuti, but no, the T.
Is at
the placement of the T in the name, because it's hard, the placement in the cartouche, to me suggests it's Jehuyet. So Isis is Isit. So all feminine names, all women's names, all goddesses' names have that.
Oh,
T.
that's so telling. There's so much there. Wow.
And even I know the can't speak for any of the other nations over on Turtle Island, but I know the Lakota talk about the two-spirit people. Mm-hmm. Non-binary folk have always been here.
I feel like there's a rising tide of understanding about this Yrosgamos and this integration of polarity, and so grateful to be able to talk to you about it.
Oh, not a problem. That was great.
Do you have any way that people can connect with you?
I've got a book on tarot coming. It's in editing phase at the moment. It's going to be called The Living Language of Tarot. Oh, nice. And interestingly, it is to try to teach people how to read tarot without getting bogged down in other people's interpretations of the tarot. Mm. Don't just depend on the Rider-Waite interpretations or the Crowley interpretations or whatever. Please read them and appreciate them and take them on. Mm. How do you connect and understand your filters and your biases, and understand the biases and filters that these creators have come forth with? And it's more of a workbook, so that there are exercises, so that, because you can't just read about this, you actually have to do it. But here's an exercise. Do this. Hopefully this will train you so that you could pick up any card and develop that relationship with the card and construct the meaning of that card. I mean, it doesn't matter. Is it Waite? Is it Crowley? Is it the Voyager Tarot? Is it the Mermaid Tarot? Is it whatever? You get it. You engage with it, and you develop a language with it.
Pandora's Last Gift. Follow Petah Raven on Substack and stay in touch for this book that's coming out. I cannot wait for that. My daughter just got this first deck, and she's I have to wait to learn how to read it. And I was like, the first thing you should do is just really, if you want to give me a reading right now, you can just tell me what you see in the pictures. and that will
Yeah.
be enough. That's how to begin. And
Yeah.
so we did a little bit of that. That's really how to start with that process. So I love that book's coming forward from you. That's wonderful. Oh, it's been such a pleasure. Thanks so much for being
Lovely, lovely meeting you and speaking with you face to face.
You too.